Hello, everyone. Welcome to the House of College Hoops. I'm Sam Basil, joined alongside a crew of Michael DeRosa, Sarah Kiernan, Trevor Everett is here as well. We've got a couple other people hopping in and out throughout the show, but we are here. The bracket has been made, and we're ready to go. 2025 NCAA Tournament is on the horizon. Every team, all 31 conferences, have punched their auto bid, and the next 3-4 days or so are pretty much going to be devoted to building brackets, picking winners, and trying to have as great of a March as we can. So, like I said, big crew here today. Michael DeRosa, Sarah Kiernan, Trevor Everett. This past week has been fantastic in terms of conference tournaments. Plenty of teams, clinching those auto spots. A little bit of some surprises, some that we expected. But as you can see here are all 31 automatic bids. The Pac-12, obviously, as you can see on our graphic, taking a little nap before they come back in 2026. The one thing I wanted to point out here, obviously, one of the biggest stories of the weekend, St. John's taking down Creighton in the Big East Championship, winning their first Big East tournament title in 25 years. Rick Pitino came in his second year with the programs, completely turned things around, brought a new spark back to Queens, back to the Garden. So, Sarah, as a Johnny yourself, I wanted to give you the floor and just talk about what this win means for you, what this win means for the St. John's Big East community, as well as the city of New York. So, the floor is yours.
Oh, it means everything. It fully means everything. I am so proud of my alma mater. I wish they did it last season so I could, still be a student watching all of this. However, it's amazing to see how so many people, I'm an alumni, my mom's an alumni, seeing how much pride we take in having someone come back and, Pitino turn this team around so quickly. Even last season, a lot of people were, they probably should have been in the tournament last season. However, this year, they maybe have a small heart attack being the 2 seed in the very, very last pick today. But it just means everything for, the excitement that everyone has, to bring it back to New York. St. John's been a staple and a lot of people have forgotten about them, and Pitino coming back and being the New York kid he is. And it's amazing to see how quickly he was able to bring St. John's back to the mainstream media, to the limelight of everyone paying attention to, the Johnnies. It's so fun to see this team emerge kind of like Phoenix from the ashes of what we've seen the past 25 years and bring it all the way back up.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, not only is this big for St. John's, New York, the Big East, etc., but I mean, this is big for Rick Pitino in so many ways. Obviously, getting back to the pinnacle, of Big East basketball. And then, as we're going to go into it a little bit later, the way that the bracket shaked out for St. John's, it's going to be a little bit of a nostalgic, first couple potential games, which is going to be very, very interesting. But I wanted to go around the horn here and take a look at some of the other auto bids. A lot of them pretty expected. A lot of teams clinching, the regular season title along with their tournament title. VCU, Duke, Bryant, kind of sticking out as some of those for me. McNeese, obviously, pretty much one of the most dominant teams we've seen in the Southland, clinching the tournament for the second year in a row. But then we still got some surprises. I mean, for me, I feel like Colorado State taking the crown was a little bit kind of out there. Gonzaga, I know a lot of people, it's always a toss-up between them and St. Mary's. I really thought St. Mary's had it this year. But for you guys, Michael, Trevor, Sarah, starting off with you, Mike, what is kind of the biggest standout here in this field of 31 out of the larger 68?
In terms of like unexpected winners, or in terms of
just an unexpected auto bid? Yeah.
I mean, I think we look at, if we're getting real crazy here, Sam. Dear God, that's just what I'm here for, though, I guess. Mount St. Mary's, I believe, was running like 6 or 7 dudes in the MAC as they ran through the MAC. They got the 6th seed in the MAC tournament. Merrimack was really good this year. They took them down. Quinnipiac fell early, and then Iona was really hot. Like, they have some really good guards. Adam Njai was like a 4-star recruit, if I remember correctly. They had some legit talent, and somehow Mount St. Mary's took down all those teams. So credit to them. And I believe St. Francis was under 500. Making the tournament, also very impressive. But I don't expect either of those two teams to win a game in Dayton, if that. says anything.
Yeah, St. Francis, I believe, I checked this just before the show, but I believe they are the only team under 500 overall to make this year's NCAA tournament. They are the lowest ranked team, according to Ken Palm, to be in the tournament at 350th in the country, and they finished out. They're heading into the tournament 16-17 overall. Trevor, for you, any big standouts? I just want to ask first. As the big CAA guy, UNC Wilmington, what could you say about their run? Oh, you're on mute.
I thought I was unmuted.
Gotcha there.
So, yeah, great start to the podcast, right? So, to answer your question originally from the Southern Bureau here of the pod, Wofford, that's a surprise to everyone, and people are going to find out really quickly about underhand free throws. Hasn't been a thing since like the 70s. Can't wait to see that.
Hey, don't forget about Canyon Barry. Don't forget about Canyon Barry.
I think that's the whole story. It was like I think got help with him, or there's some story with him there I got to look more into. Shout out to Wofford Terriers. That SoCon tournament is always incredible every year, and it just seems that the number one seed I think I saw it, the 2-bit SoCon guys, they're incredible. I think the 2 seed in the SoCon has lost like the last 15 years. I think it's something stupid like that. And so basically you just have to not be 2. And the 1 hasn't had luck in that league lately as well. So Wofford, they're just a testament to teams getting hot. To answer your UNCW question, it's a team that I didn't get to cover until later in the year just because of scheduling and regionalization of this area. And but man, did I catch them at the right time? Good grief. Got to see them a couple of times in a row to end their season. And I said to somebody after the UNCW game against Delaware, where of course they ended up playing them again a week and a half later. No one would ever have thought that. But I said to somebody at that game, I was like, this is the team that goes to March. Like, this is it. I've seen enough. This is a cohesive group. I've called back on a couple of podcasts as well to this moment in the Delaware game where it seemed like every week Takeo Siddle was like, this team just, there's just like this lack of leadership, whatever. And then all of a sudden these guys just started gelling in February, and they were having their, huddles on their own and timeouts. And there was a moment in that game I was like, this is the team that gets it. Now, talk about this matchup. They got hosed. That's the worst possible 3 you could have ever gotten, in my opinion, matchup. And stylistically, we could get into it a little bit later. But a good core of this team has already beaten Kentucky at Kentucky, and they didn't get Kentucky. And so I was like, man, that really sucks for the league, sucks for them. I still think they can win a game. I think that's just, man, but you got Texas Tech. Good luck.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough one. Let's get into our tournament tiers that Michael DeRosa and I have been working on for the past month or so. On our last episode, just before the second week of conference tournaments kicked off last Sunday, we came up with this field of 43 teams that we felt like should be in the tournament. And we did pretty good. 41 of those 43 teams made it. The only 2 that did not were Indiana and West Virginia. Indiana finished 19-13 in the season. They lost to Oregon. They were bounced out of the Big Ten tournament in the second round with a 72-59 loss. They finished 48th in the Ken Palm, 54th in the net as of right now. That's 7 o'clock Eastern on Selection Sunday. And then West Virginia, who finished 19-13. They lost to Colorado in round 2 of the Big 12 tournament. They finished 53rd in Ken Palm, 51st in the net. Kind of what killed these guys' steam, kind of, so to speak, towards the end of the season here? DeRosa, if you have any thoughts there.
Oh, I'm not going to lie. I apologize. I zoned out for a little bit. What's the question?
So, talking about Indiana and West Virginia, they're the only 2 teams that were in this graphic that we built up in our tournament tiers that we thought should be in, and they got left out.
111 out of 111 of people on the matrix. It's the only time a team has ever been in every single bracket matrix and missed the tournament. They got completely screwed. And, the first thing that comes to mind is, I guess dystopian, for lack of a better term. Like, that's a very egregious thing. That'd be like something like Stephen A. Smith would say. It's like, it's an overreaction, but like, it was the only word that came to mind. UNC only made it because of TV, right? Like, let's be real here.
Is the DeVries injury enough, you think? Is that enough of a thing?
The committee never considers injuries, though, right? Like, would this be the first year they actually consider injuries? And even then, they went They went to Kansas and beat Iowa State without DeVries. Like, their entire conference run was without DeVries. DeVries got hurt after the Georgetown game. So,
it's true. No, it's true.
I mean, I don't know. I really think they got screwed. I think they just got a raw deal, and I don't think anyone saw that coming, frankly. So, I just think that was bad bracketing.
So I'll just, you guys know this, Sarah. We haven't done a pod in a while, but I'll just defer to my old saying of when I give you my opinion, it's strictly my opinion. I'm not a bracketologist, so I'm deferring on any of that stuff. But I'll just quote Bubba. I mean, I took notes while they were going through that. It's simply like the UNC case, West Virginia. They didn't really get into, but they were, I believe someone correct me. They were the second team out, I believe, or first team out. They were literally the first team out, correct?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what I thought. Okay, so this is exactly what if Memphis UAB is what it came down to, and if UAB had won, so they had already made the decision that North Carolina was the team ahead of West Virginia. It sounds like, and obviously Bubba's not in the room. They went through all that. Seth did a really good job of asking that question and being like, "Hey, there's people that don't know this process, like myself and a lot of us, and people are going to immediately be like, oh my God, Bubba, you're the reason." I really like how Seth laid it out, and so obviously, like, there was a lot that went into it. Unfortunately, just for the sake of the way that they answer these stupid panels is they didn't really answer why North Carolina was above West Virginia. So I mean, I'm sure we can get into that. I think I'd love somebody who's more informed on that to talk about it. But this is exactly what they said. Memphis UAB is what it came down to. If UAB won, UNC was out. And because Memphis won, then UNC was already in. So West Virginia wasn't even considered at that point. So less bid Steelers was obviously, we thought was going to be in their favor, but it ended up being not in their favor.
Sarah,
seeing UNC come up made no sense. Like, you guys know, I've been really in and out this season just because of work, and I still, follow along with everything. But when I saw UNC come up, I looked at my TV and was like, what are they talking about? Like, why are they even being considered right now after you look at their season? Like, there's, like you guys were saying, West Virginia and like some other teams that could have easily taken that spot over. Now, I feel like the better question is, do they actually get in, though? They're playing San Diego State. It's going to be an interesting matchup no matter what. But if they lose, kind of like what happened last year with that first game on that Thursday, where it was just, I can't think of the teams right now, but it was just so terrible. And everyone was like, you really decided to pick these two teams to put in? I feel like that might be the matchup that we're going to see. It's going to be like back and forth, kind of slow. We'll see what happens. But if UNC doesn't make it in and they don't beat San Diego State, I feel like that's going to show we probably should pick actually a better team to put in.
So, I believe the team you're talking about is Virginia, right? That was kind of a last team in, and everyone was kind of bothered about it because they got in over Indiana State.
It was Virginia. It was another ACC game, of course.
And it was like the weirdest game because like they could not score to save their life, and it was like a super low scoring game. I remember I was covering the first round of 64 last year in Brooklyn, and we were all watching it and being like in the media room being like, what are we watching right now? Like, what is going on?
Yeah. They ended up
we all agree
by 25 points to Colorado State, by the way, 67-42.
Yeah. Can we all agree too? As soon as North Carolina came up, they were like the second or third team revealed because of the way it fell with the region. Can we all agree? I mean, maybe I'm speaking for myself here. I'd love to know everyone else's thoughts. But as soon as I saw that, I was like, Texas and Xavier are in. As soon as I saw them pull up, I was like, yep, they're in.
As soon as my reaction to the exact opposite, as soon as I saw UNC and I was like, those two teams are both
one quad one win thing. That was it. Like I was like, it's there. If Xavier, like I just immediately was like, Xavier's going to be in.
That makes sense.
Texas.
Yeah.
I think they had just as compelling of a case in North Carolina did at that line. And by the way, this is just a full stamp on. We don't have to get into this today, but this exact conversation is why this tournament does not need to go anything past 68 teams. It's ridiculous. Absolutely asinine.
Oh, great.
I think my theory that I mean, it would never work practically, but like some years I think we should just cut it to 64. Other years I think we should be able to go to 72. Like last year, the bubble was good enough to go to 72. This year we could stick with 64.
Yeah.
Conversation.
It's funny that you mentioned
it would
Xavier.
Never work practically, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's fair.
It's funny that you mentioned Xavier because of the three teams. So out of the two teams that in this graphic that did not get in, West Virginia and IU, there were 5 teams that DeRosa and I kind of deliberated at the end that we felt like, would be, potential bid stealer beneficiaries. That being UNC, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Xavier, and just lost my fifth one. Ohio State. And the only team that did not make the cut out of those 5 was Ohio State. The one thing that I noticed was just going back to the North Carolina thing. It felt like them putting North Carolina in the first 4. Obviously, if they had to go somewhere, that's where they kind of deserve to be based on how they've played. But did you kind of feel like that was the committee being like, yeah, we know we want to throw them in here, but just so you don't get too mad, we'll throw them in here in the first 4, just so we can get at least a game out of them.
Sure. I mean, I genuinely don't think it came down to TV deals. It's the first thing that came to mind, but it's just not how it works. There's a committee for a reason. They're not thinking about that. But if they were going to get in, they would have to have been in the first 4 because there's no way you could take a team that was 1-12 in Q1 games and just put them safely in the tournament. That's not happening.
Yeah. So, I mean, it'll be tough. But the 2 teams that I felt like, were fair additions out of those 5, both out of the SEC, Arkansas and Oklahoma, they were both top 40 in KenPom. Arkansas was 40th in the net. Oklahoma was 43rd in the net. Any thoughts on those 2 teams? I mean, did we feel like that was kind of a fair addition? I know it kind of really inflates the amount of SEC teams that are in this tournament, but I mean, they are pretty solid programs.
I was surprised by Georgia, not who you just asked
I
about.
was surprised by Georgia.
I just if you're gonna maybe Marco can argue this, but I know that their resume was better in Arkansas. I get that's why they were better seated. I'm just not sure. Sometimes the eye test and the basketball has to matter. And just there were stretches throughout the season where they just were not a tournament. They just have not been a consistent tournament team. And I know that resume ultimately was on their side. And I think that's obviously a testament to the SEC. I'm not knocking the fact that they're in there. I'm knocking the fact that they were that highly seeded. I thought it might have been actually a little bit more interesting there with Arkansas.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can tell you, I think if Gonzaga wins, they play. Who does Gonzaga play? If
Houston.
They win? Houston. Yeah, that would be a top 10 KenPom matchup. And Gonzaga is going to smoke Georgia. We will leave that there because that is one team that is going up versus one team that's coming down, and it's a bad matchup for Georgia. So I think we will be able to watch Georgia just get smoked, and then this conversation will begin again.
And we can talk about that once we get into our region breakdown. Let's start off with the East. Oops, that is not the correct bracket.
Sorry, there's a ton to go through.
This is our bracket here. Starting off, let's start off with actually the South region here. Auburn taking the 1 seed. We've got some decent matchups all around. You know what? Sorry, let me get a better look at this bracket right here. But starting off, we've got Auburn at the 1 seed. Michigan State facing off against, Bryant, the alma mater of our, heads, the founders of House Enterprise, that being, Jake Zimmer and Will Tondo. So that'll be a really great matchup here. And this is much better, right, guys? So looking at this bracket right now for you guys, outside of, some of the obvious picks, starting off with you, Michael, who do you feel like is going to be a sneaky contender to advance to at least the second round? I mean, obviously the big one that everyone likes to go for is the 12 seed over the 5. And this year we've got a really great 12 seed in UC San Diego going up against Big Ten champs Michigan. But if you want to skip them for now, if there are any other matchups that you really like, let us know.
Yeah, UCSD was going to be my pick. Aniwa Tate Jones is incredible.
One more time for the folks that have never watched him once.
Aniwa Tate Jones. He is incredible. He's a D2 transfer. He was the Big West Player of the Year. Size, really good shooting ability, gets to the rim, distributes really well, and they have a ton of shooters around him. So it's just kick, bang, kick, bang. They had, I believe the kid's name is Hayden Gray. I was watching that game last night. I believe he was 6 of 7 from 3 at one point, and essentially won them the game. That's a really good UCSD team. I could see them beating. I think they should have been an at-large if they lost to UC Irvine. They probably would not have been, but I think they should have been. I could see them beating Michigan, a team that Michigan has played a lot of close games, And the numbers nerd in me tells you if you're playing in close games every single time, you're not going to win them every single time. There was obviously that Providence team a couple years back. There are other teams that are just awesome in close games. But when there's coin flips, it's not landing on heads every single time. So I could see that. And then A&M, I don't think it's a terrible matchup for them because, I mean, A&M rebounds really well, and they got beat on the glass last night. UC Irvine has a really good big whose name I cannot pronounce, like Luchin or something. But they kind of got beat there, so I could see A&M getting A&M getting UCSD there, but I could see UCSD making a run. And another one to steal anyone else's team. We talked about how they didn't deserve to make the tournament. This is a really good draw for UNC if they end up beating San Diego State or San Diego State. Ole Miss is a team that scares me a lot. And then we're looking at Iowa State, and Keyshawn Gilbert's not going to play. We got it right before. I was just texting someone. Keyshawn Gilbert is out for the tournament. That, at least for the foreseeable future.
I was going to say, I know for first fact it was the first round. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, it said foreseeable future with the Rothstein update. So that's bad. He is really, really good. And Iowa State is much worse without some of their good guards. He's one of them. So, yeah, I could see Iowa State kind of getting beaten early. As much as I really like that team. I think this region I think is the one that can go the craziest.
Yeah.
I mean,
Trevor, the team I wanted to ask you about. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. No, I mean, just to Doris's point, it's statistically the hardest. They actually were. I thought that was really interesting. I was going to bring this up at some point later anyway. But they weighted them all, based on the lower the number. I can't remember exactly how they did it, the overall number, added them up and then give your average there. And I think it was one of the closest, just the closest across the board, which seems really all over the place with how we kind of feel this bracket kind of went with some of the seeds. It obviously takes into account the top 4 seeds. And this was the hardest region. Shocker.
Absolutely. The team I wanted to ask you about, Iowa State. They're coming in as the 3 seed, going up against Lipscomb in the first round. How far do you feel like they have how far do you see them advancing in this region?
Yeah, so specifically, that was actually where I was going to go. It's almost like we've done podcasts together before. So,
hey, look at that.
So, the problem I have with this region, really quick, just from an overview standpoint, is this is probably for me, the region of coaches I adore the most. Just coaches I absolutely think are awesome and I adore. And this is really going to be hard for me to pick. I'd have to pick with my brain and not my heart. Love Pat Kelsey, love McDermott. We've had Dusty on ECB a few times. Love that guy to death. San Diego State Dutcher, love that guy to death. Donnie Lipscomb, head coach there. This is just hard. I'm going to have to pick with my brain, right? And with that being said, your answer to your question is, Lipscomb, I think, is going to beat Iowa State. I fully believe that. I think the high octane offense, I think the missing of Gilbert, they've got guys that can absolutely stretch you from the guard spot. And I was probably going to pick it anyway, but with Gilbert being out, that just adds fuel to that fire. And I mean, talk about preparation is, they're going to have that team prepared. They're going to be ready. They've had time. That championship was what, a week ago now or something like that. And so I think they got the favorable draw. I think the style actually really goes and plays into their hand. And, I think Lipscomb's going to get it done.
The Jacob Ogsenovich matchup versus Josh Jefferson, I think, is really interesting. I think that kind of determines the game because if Josh Jefferson's able to take him out of the game, which he's been able to do in conference play, I don't think the guards of Lipscomb are going to be getting past to Curtis Jones, Taman Lipsy very easily. But if Ogsenovich is making plays, I could see it, especially with how the Lipscomb spaces the floor. But another thing with Lipscomb is they're not very deep. Coach Acuff was on the show and he mentioned that. He's like, yeah, we're kind of going 6-7 deep at this point. So that's another factor of this one.
Absolutely. Sarah, 2 Big East teams are in this region. Creighton got the 9 seed and Marquette got the 7 seed. 2 teams that really had hopes of winning the Big East tournament. Obviously, Creighton made it all the way to the final. So, like we said with a couple other teams here, I mean, there's a lot of unfinished business in this region. So out of the 2 Big East teams, which one do you feel like is going to be playing here with the most fire?
You know what? I got to go with Creighton on that because they got so close. Kalkbrenner in his last year, he's been a staple of when you think of the Big East, you think of Ryan Kalkbrenner. You think of that team and, it's kind of hard to miss the guy. I'm going to say that much. Very hard to, not pay attention to him when he's on the floor. I think that because they lost and have how the game ended with them losing to St. John's in the Big East Championship. I think it's going to give them a little bit more fire against Louisville, definitely. I'm really excited to watch the Marquette New Mexico game. Obviously, you have Rick Pitino's son, their head coach. He's also coach of the year for that conference, and first father-son duo. I think that knowing that he could have a possibility to play his dad, I feel like that also kind of gives a fire of like if they can both kind of manipulate the situation and get to that point, it'd be awesome. But that one's gonna be an interesting game because I think that Shaka has a lot of, energy for his team. He always has, but I feel like there's a different level now, knowing it's going against New Mexico, who's done great things this past season and how the program's been turned around the past couple of years.
Really quick, Hazel, before we go anywhere else, I just have to, since you're on topic of Big East, I just want to ask, are we undervaluing Marquette, or is it just strictly the way they finished the season and just strictly I know, DeRosa, you and I are lockstep on this, at least until recently. I remember the tweet a few months ago. It was like, until they play like a top 25 team, I'm not putting them in the top 25. And I was like, agreed. I think we were in lockstep for about a month and a half on that. Obviously, Shaka. I think there's some interesting draws there for them. I think it's going to be really matchup dependent. Cam Jones, obviously best player in any of those games for the most part. But my point being is, I guess my overarching question is, would we be surprised if we look up and they're in the Elite Eight?
Yes. I think the region kind of opens up for them to make that run, but I don't know. I think they have decent draws, but at the same time, I could also very easily see them losing to Donovan Dent. Just Donovan Dent going ham. And Neely Jr. Joseph, I mean, we saw Ben Gold in the Big East tournament. He was getting bullied inside. I could see Jr. Joseph doing the same thing. Marquette just hasn't been playing at that level. I don't hate any of the matchups individually. Like, if you can put a Stevie Mitchell or a Chase Ross on Donovan Dent, try to take him out of the game, I think that's step one to them making a decent little run. Michigan State is a team that's kind of playing with fire. And frankly, I think Bryant can give Michigan State a game just because Bryant has so much length. I don't think Bryant will win that game, but I think they can give him a game. So I think Michigan State again, that's a team they could beat. But Michigan State scores so much inside, and Ben Gold is your rim protector.
Yep. I only asked about Marquette, to be clear, because at one point this was a top 3 seed. I mean, they literally were playing like it, and so to go down to 7 just seems like a big fall off.
I think that the biggest thing was Marquette started off so strong, and everyone had the high potential and high hopes for them this season. I feel like there was a lot of they kind of just fell into the middle within at least the Big East, and I don't know, say across the board, but it's funny too, looking back at the AP rankings throughout the season, you're like, interesting that they're still, ranked so high, and, they had obviously good weeks and they had great games this season, but it's still looking back of they weren't the same team that made the Elite Eight a couple years ago, 2 seasons ago with Tyler Kohler. It's not the same team as it was, and you still kind of put that same pressure that wasn't performing the same.
Yeah, absolutely. And before we close off this region, I want to make an introduction to another panelist that is joining us on the show. That is Riley Frayne from Mid-Major Madness. Riley is a great friend of the House of College Hoops. He's a guy that I've spent a lot of time sitting next to at the media table at Fordham's Rose Hill Gym this season. Riley, how you doing this weekend?
Hey, I'm good, Sam. Thanks for that intro. Certainly a lot of hours we've spent together watching some interesting basketball over at Rose Hill. But I appreciate everyone, for having me again this year. Really exciting time of year, of course, for everyone. And, I'm excited to talk some mid-majors. I'm sure there's, as the sort of the mid-major madness analyst here, I'll definitely have some interesting takes and hopefully some good things to add, some good points to add. So I appreciate you all having me on here. I'm excited to get into it.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll get those takes in the next 3 regions. But closing off the South, let's go around the horn here, and don't worry, we're not going to hold you guys to these picks. We'll wait till your official brackets get released later in the week. But a gut check South regional champion. First thought, Michael DeRosa, starting off with you. Go. Oh, you're muted.
Auburn, wagon.
Oh, shocker there. All right. Trevor, who you got?
Michigan State just had so much things going wrong down the stretch, just like little things here and there that they played really well, but just there was enough eye-opening weaknesses that I just can't sit here and be like, this is the team that gets it done. Texas A&M is a team that I was probably going to pick to the Elite Eight, given anything I could. Michael knows that. So many shows I've done with Michael. I'm going to go with Auburn. Very reluctant.
To be fair, A&M played Auburn pretty tough. Like A&M, the way A&M offensive rebounds, that's a weakness for Auburn.
You know who A&M reminds me of this year? That Illinois run that Illinois had last year.
Yeah,
and they'll run into again perfect draw. If I'm drawing the map right, they would run against Auburn like UConn did against Illinois, and obviously we know how that turned out. Yeah. So that cluster between Auburn, I think whoever makes the Final Four is either Auburn or A&M. So I'll stick with Auburn, but I think it's one of those two teams.
All right, Sarah, who you got?
I'm going Auburn. They've done great things this season. I know. I'm just following the pack at this point, but this season's been a highlight to watch. It's been, you've seen some close things too, but I see the War Eagles kind of continue going.
Is it not inherently funny that Yale's on the side of the bracket though? Like, is it just not just a little bit funny? Like I saw it and I immediately just chuckled and moved on. I was like, wow. Anyway.
All right, Riley, are you going to break the mold here? Oh, you're muted.
You're muted.
All right, what did they say? Never go full panel, right? I mean, unfortunately, though, I'm going to have to go with Auburn. It just feels like as long as they can stay healthy, I don't know if I see anyone stopping them. Hopefully, you guys mentioned Texas A&M, and they played them well during the regular season, during the regular season, excuse me. So, I don't know if that's maybe my second pick, and I know Trevor touched on some of the things that have gone wrong for Michigan State lately, but it just feels like, as Michael put it, Auburn is an absolute wagon.
Hate to go panel, but I'm gonna have to go Auburn as well. I mean, talk about fire. Playing with some fire under your butt. I mean, I feel like the fact that they did not win the SEC tournament, they're angry. So let's call it. Auburn takes the South, and let's move on to the West. The 1 seed in the West is a team that took them down this year, that won the SEC tournament, that being the Florida Gators. St. John's taking the 2 seed. They'll go up against Omaha in the first round in Providence. Some other notable matchups. I mean, the 12 seed, Colorado State over Memphis, the 5 seed, Drake, the 11 seed over 6, Missouri. For you guys, let's start off with you, Riley. Looking at some of these mid-major programs, I'm not sure if any of these you got to see in person this year. I know you were at the Garden for the Big East, but any mid-major teams that you feel like, I don't know if you want to say Memphis because I know they don't want to be a mid-major team, but any programs that you feel like have a shot at making the second weekend in this region?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Memphis. I think just for the time being, I'll leave them out of this because there are some really exciting other mid-major programs in this region. Just to touch on a couple of them, I'll start with Norfolk State. I mean, always a really exciting program under head coach Rob Jones. This year, Brian Moore, who they bought in at the point guard position at the transfer portal, has just been another phenomenal addition. It seems like, every year they're bringing in another guy at the portal who's sort of killing it in the guard position for them and, helps them win the MEAC every year. And I don't know that they'll be able to, put up much of a fight against Florida, but just, worth pointing out how good of a coach Rob Jones is. I know he's been getting, talks about, maybe taking a step up at some point in the future. But every year it seems like he has this Norfolk State team, just dominating in the MEAC. Continuing down the line, Grand Canyon has been really good the past couple of years and finally breaking in this year. Of course, you got to talk about Tyone Grant Foster, who's just been phenomenal for them the past 2 years, really. But this year they've had a couple other guys step up, Jacoby Coles, Rayshawn Harrison as well, a couple seniors alongside Grant Foster. And I think they could put up a fight against Maryland. That's a really offensive, fire-powered team. They sort of steamrolled in the WAC this year, and I know they didn't end up winning the regular championship, but they ended up losing the regular season championship to Utah Valley State. But just overall, really good Grand Canyon team. They put it together in the conference tournament when it mattered most. They have a high-powered offense, and I know, again, that's a really good Maryland team, a 4 seed, obviously, but they could put up a fight. Now, I think the next team you need to highlight is Drake. That's sort of the big one for me. I think they could put up a real fight against Missouri State. Obviously, just Missouri. That's sort of been the big storyline. Drake this year, head coach Ben McCollum coming up from the D2 level where he's been competing for national championships, consistently making the NCAA tournament. He sort of bought up his unique style of coaching and along with him a bunch of his D2 players, and they've found a ton of success this season. Bennett Sturts, it has been sort of leading the way for them. But guys like Daniel Abreu, Mitch Massacari, and they sort of ran away with the Missouri Valley Conference where they were regular season champs and tourney champs. I think that's a team that could put up a real fight against Missouri, and could, we could see them win a couple in the tournament. They've just been so good throughout the year. They're so well coached. They can score really well. They defend really well. They just do a little bit of everything really well, and it's made them just a competitive team against, sort of absolutely blowing by expectations. I think it would be fair to say. I don't want to take too much of the time up on this region. I know, we'll probably keep it a little short, but I think it's worth touching on UNCW, just a team, a really strong two-way team that does a little bit of everything well. I see Trevor pumping his fist in the chat, a fellow CAA aficionado, if you will. But yeah, just a really strong team under head coach Takio Siddle. They do a little bit of everything well. Donovan Newby, a strong two-way player, solid rebounder, can still run, from as a point guard, can still run the offense as well. Kamari McGriff, they have a ton of size with guys like Harlan Obinaha, who's been solid on the interior for them as well. And again, that's a really strong Texas Tech team, but we saw earlier in the season them struggling against a couple mid-major programs, and obviously later in the season they've been really tough. But just worth mentioning that UNCW, a team that's really strong both ways, and certainly could put up a fight.
Yeah. How about the path for Harlan Obioha, man? Being a top, like a 4-5-star football recruit, being recruited by SEC schools, goes and decides to play college basketball at Niagara, and then is now could be a darling in the NCAA tournament for UNC. What a path!
He is an absolute unit. I mean, and he fits into this UNCW sort of rotation so well. He's like the perfect interior piece for them. I don't know that there's a lot of other teams that sort of an Obinaha would fit into super well. Just for those who aren't familiar, he's like 7 foot, I think 280, if I'm not mistaken, Trevor.
And has the feet of a wide receiver. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, absolutely. And his hands aren't the best, but if you get the ball inside to him, I mean,
they've worked on it.
He's an absolute issue.
Michael, I want to ask you about this 8-9 game, because this might be one of the more fiery 8-9 games that we'll see in the tournament. That being the 8 seed UConn versus 9 seed Oklahoma. We touched on Oklahoma in the beginning of the show. They were kind of one of those last kind of sneaky teams to get into the tournament. But what can the Sooners do against UConn, aside from just win, to prove that they should have been more towards the front of people's minds when talking about this tournament?
I mean, yeah, you really answered it. It's just pretty much win. If they're able to kind of contain this UConn offense, I would be pretty impressed. I think the talent disparity, if we looked at these teams preseason and said they'd be playing in the NCAA tournament, we'd be thinking it was a 5-12 game, right? I think, and even then, I don't think we had UConn that low. I think the talent disparity in this game is kind of severe. Like, yeah, I think UConn might have the 3 best guys on the floor, maybe 4, honestly. Jeremiah Fears is up there. He is. Don't get me wrong, he is special, but he's really young, and going up against a guy like Liam McNeely, Alex Caravan, Solo Ball, where would he fit into that mix? And then just going down the roster, Jaden Jones, they had like Oklahoma's like a fine team, but like they were kind of struggling late until they put together those like 4 really, really close games late. Won 2 of them, just did enough to like barely sneak their way into the tournament. But I don't know. I think UConn kind of can like really show up and show out here. I just think they'll find a way to contain Fears. I think Hassan Diarra is pretty tough. I think that's a tough. I mean, you're talking about a reclass freshman, a guy who is, I don't know, is he 18 now, Jeremiah Fears, going against like a 37-year-old in Hassan Diarra who's been playing college basketball since Jesus was around. So, yeah, I think this one really favors UConn.
Who would be the best? Nah, never. I'll leave that alone, Michael.
I do have something though. So, I mean, UConn being 8. Where are you guys thinking about this? Because like obviously coming from someone like DeRosa and I, both huge Big East people, someone who also went to St. John's as an alumni, now seeing that they beat UConn multiple times. UConn is not the same team that they were, and I think that was the biggest thing going into the season. People had that same expectation of their back-to-back national champions, and they're going to just continue that on. Well, you got to look at their team. Obviously, they have great players, but it's a lot different from what it had been. And, Hurley's never going to change, but I think it's the change of Hurley's never going to change. That's the truth of you're always going to hear him screaming at someone and getting a technical foul. And, that's just how it goes. Them being 8, what do you guys think? Like, should they be like just kind of overall? Because when I saw that they were 8, I was like, I could see them being a little bit lower. I could also see them being like a 7, depending on who they were playing. I don't know. I feel like this could have gone a couple different ways.
The problem for me, if it, let's just for your hypothetical, say they stick in the same region. I think Kansas has been just as bad as of late. So like, I couldn't justify flopping Kansas and UConn. So UConn being the 8, I think they got that right. And plus, let's be honest, Bill Self and John Calipari, 2 guys that might not be coaching the same team next year. It's just kind of fun, just kind of cool. I love that.
Speaking of Bill Self and John Calipari, that's the last thing I wanted to touch on in this region before we get our gut check picks. Self, Calipari facing off in the first round. And then, depending on how things go, we could see one of those two going up against Patino and St. John's in the second round should St. John's beat Omaha. I mean, for you guys, and this is happening in Providence, I believe. So, I mean, for you guys, I mean, could you have not got a more kind of nostalgic draw for one region of the NCAA tournament?
It is. You're correct. It is in Providence.
It's awesome.
The 215 is as well.
Yeah. But imagine the team that bangs trash cans just ruins it all.
It would be one of the
great.
cooler stories that does it. You're right. It would be one of the cooler stories that does it. Just from
it's gonna be really fun. Like self Calipari in the first round of a tournament matchup is crazy, and then the winner facing Rick Pitino. Like that is, you mentioned it, Sam. That is old school.
3 Hall of Famers in 4 teams. Gotta love it. There's nothing like this sport. It's ridiculous.
All right, so let's go around the horn. Riley, let's start off with you. Who's coming out of this region? Gut check pick for the West.
Yeah, I'm gonna sound like a little bit of a homer, having literally been at the Big East tournament yesterday. But I gotta pick the memento of St. John's. It's just too fun of a storyline. I mean, you guys just talked about you guys touched on it all. Them having to be, it being fairly local once they get down a little bit, or in the first round for Providence, and I know they'll be out west for later down the line in the bracket. Excuse me, but I think it's just tough to pick against their momentum right now, and it would just be a lot of fun for college basketball. I think to see them make an exciting run. But that being said, I think Drake's going to make a run too. I'm picking them to win a game or two here.
Yeah. Sarah, who you got?
I think it's very obvious of where I'm going to be picking. I'm picking my alma mater, St. John's. I totally agree with Riley. The momentum that they've had through the last 3 months, the entire season, basically, the love that this team has for each other, the craziness that you see like at the Garden for Big East games. You have not seen that kind of red storm in a Garden game in 25 years. So I'm sticking with St. John's. Johnny's going to make a run, and I'm so excited to see it.
All right. Trevor, is Omaha doing it, or is St. John's going to take it?
Couple things. Rest in peace apart, around the horn. You did mention that at the top there. Rest in peace around the horn. So a couple things, if you don't mind. So I don't think this is the region of chaos. I don't think this is the one where just left and right things are getting picked apart and everyone's looking up going, what happened within 8 hours? Although I do like UNCW, like I've said before, I like Drake. I like Colorado State. I like Grand Canyon. I like these teams just in a vacuum, but not necessarily in the matchup. So just wanted to preface with that. The last time Florida was a 1 seed, they lost in the national semifinal to UConn, who would go on to win the national championship that year. St. John's, just to kind of answer the total, domino we're on here on my screen from bottom to top. We're so far going to be 2 for 2 from YouTube, but I think they got a favorable draw. I really do. Texas Tech, let's say that Texas Tech makes it through that part of the region. I think stylistically, like there's not a single team that's like really fast paced. It's going to put them honestly, not a single one of those teams that they'd play from 6 to 15 other than Missouri would be like a team that I think would be a stylistic disadvantage for St. John's. I think they got a absolute perfect draw in that regard. So I think they're playing the Elite 8. I think they're playing Florida, and Florida makes the Final Four.
Absolutely. DeRosa?
Yeah, Texas Tech's rim protection is something that I would definitely have to monitor against St. John's, because St. John's, like the way Texas Tech defends, they kind of want to run you off the three-point line. St. John's doesn't want to shoot threes, so that kind of plays into their hand a little bit. But I could also see JT Toppin making that game like chaos. And where is the West Regional being played this year? Because
the West Regional Final?
Yeah.
Seattle?
San Francisco.
San Francisco. Okay, interesting.
At the Warriors Arena, Chase Center.
Yeah, that's going to be a weird crowd dynamic of Texas Tech versus St. John's all the way in San Francisco. I don't know if that really plays into Tech's favor or not. I could see Texas Tech winning that game. I love Elijah Hawkins. I just am kind of an Elijah Hawkins stan. I have been since he was at Howard. Hell, I watched him in high school, frankly, when he was playing with Jordan Hawkins at DeMatha. But to do a little Trev thing, like take a little pick. One, Maryland's going to smoke Grand Canyon. That game's not going to be competitive. Sorry, Riley. Two, Memphis, Colorado State, I think is going to be a really interesting game. Really interesting. We don't know the status of Tyrese Hunter. He didn't play today, but like they were never going to play him today when he was like kind of questionable. Taking on a Colorado State team that is hotter than a habanero pepper right now. They haven't lost in a really long time. And Neat Clifford has been excellent. He's an NBA player. Neat Clifford versus PJ Haggerty is a really good matchup. But yeah, I'm picking chalk here. The Gators are so good right now. They are so good. It'd be really interesting to see Walter Clayton against Rick Pitino for a trip to the Final Four. That would be something. But yeah, awesome. I got the Gators. I got the Gators beating Texas Tech as of now. I want to look into that Texas Tech St. John's matchup a little bit. That's just too early to tell.
Yeah. You know what? As a guy who lives in Queens, I'm gonna have to go with the Johnnies here. I mean, it's just they're too hot right now. Florida is so good. That's the only thing that's kind of stopping me here. But in the sake of keeping it fun, I will also go with the Giannis. Moving over to the Midwest region. Houston, the 1 seed. Tennessee, the 2. Some interesting, matchups here. McNeese, the 12 against Clemson, the 5. Troy going up against Kentucky in that 3-14 matchup. I don't know. I don't know what to make of this region. I mean, it's interesting.
A
Trevor,
lot.
a lot to make of it. Trevor, anything that you feel like people should look out for in this region?
This is the region of chaos. I was holding my breath. This is the region of chaos, without a doubt. McNeese, High Point, Texas Xavier. I think either of them could actually beat Illinois. Kentucky, Troy. You talk about a stylistic difference there. Utah State at 10, Tennessee at 2 against one of the weirdest teams in the country in Wofford. Gonzaga, Houston in the second round, for crying out loud. So just initial reactions. Everyone's pretty picking High Point. I saw them this year. I saw them beat UAB on their home floor earlier this year. That was one of the best teams I've seen in the last 2 seasons. However, even at their worst, Purdue is a really good team. I know Purdue lost by 30 to Michigan. I think you can point to some of these games and be like, Purdue clearly has weaknesses, and everyone's going to pick High Point, and I'm probably going to be one of them. I love this High Point team. I think they're a legit Sweet 16 type of team, and I'm not just saying that because they're 29, whatever. I've seen this team. I've seen their process. I've seen how they work, and I've seen how they dominate teams of all calibers, and that's probably just highlight one thing off the top that I think would be interesting. The other thing I thought was weird is there's always a 3 that we all feel like gets a weird draw, and then we always feel like there's one that gets a pretty favorable draw. And Josh made a point earlier in a text thread we have, and I think they got a pretty favorable draw because, they could have played UNCW, who, again, I mentioned earlier, a core of that team beat Kentucky at Rupp last year. I get a totally different Kentucky team, but just UNCW, some of those same guys, that could happen again. We all know that. And so I think 3-14 there for Troy. I'm not discrediting what Cross has done at Troy. I think it's incredible what they've done to come out of that conference this year, where I think the top 5 or 6 tied for the first place regular season in the Sun Belt. It was actually a pretty good top-heavy Sun Belt this year. But I think Kentucky got a favorable draw. I don't think they're worse than any Illinois, Texas, Xavier. I think they can beat UCLA or Utah State, and I favorably think they can beat Tennessee as well. So I think Kentucky's got a nice little path there to the Elite 8, and then obviously I would hope that it's Houston, but our luck says it's probably going to be Clemson or High Point or somebody like that.
Riley, I wanted to ask you about some of these mid-majors here. Obviously, Trevor, you touched on High Point a lot. I feel like people want to pick High Point because they're kind of a relatively new team to the NCAA tournament field.
First time ever. Correct.
Yeah, first time ever. They're, a lot of people kind of want to pick that brand new mid-major. I also feel like people want to pick against Purdue. Right? So for you, Riley, would you caution against picking High Point? And then also I wanted to get your thoughts on Wofford against Tennessee.
Sure. I don't know that I would caution against, picking against High Point. They can absolutely steamroll teams, as Trevor pointed out. That's an offense that, I mean, if you're into the KenPom statistics, they've been pretty much top 30, top 45 offensively in the country throughout the year. Along with that, they're the best offensive and defensive team in the in their conference, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, won regular season and obviously, conference tournament title as well.
Yep.
I mean, like you mentioned it, Sam, I think people are a little sort of primed to want to pick against Purdue, but like, I think in this case, I would understand why. It's a High Point team that, has a ton of size, and it's obviously Purdue's a team that always has a ton of size as well. But not only do they have some size and some guys who can compete on the interior, but they have great guard play. And, sort of the combination of both is gonna, I think makes it an interesting matchup against Purdue, and just with the offensive firepower, as we touched on with High Point, they're a team that is going to compete with anyone, and across the country, I would think. Now, I think the next team you asked me to touch on, Sam, was Wofford.
Yep.
I think Trevor said they were probably one of the more interesting teams in the country, certainly with all the storylines that are kind of going on around there. And if I'm not mistaken, they finished 6th in their conference in the regular season, and
Correct.
then they have one of the I think they rank top 70 in offense nationally. So just kind of got really hot late with the offense. And let's talk about some of the guys here. I think Kyler Falwich is sort of the big one you got to talk about because of the free throw shooting. I'm sure people have seen some of the videos on social media, the way he shoots free throws. Sort of late in the season, he's developed that granny style because he was shooting about 30% from the free throw line. But he's an absolute dominant, piece on the interior for them. He's averaging just shy of a double-double, and can be a bit of a facilitator on the interior too. You look at another senior like Corey Tripp, who's been 2-time all-conference selection in the SoCon between this year and last year. Shoots about 45% from the field, 35% from three, is a really consistent piece for them, who can help run the offense as well. And just, a lot of solid guards here who kind of fill in around Kyler in the middle. And it's made for a really interesting rotation here. And I think with them, the big thing is, can they keep this momentum going? Obviously, it's a really good Tennessee team, and I'm sure we'll touch on them in a little bit. I'll leave, that to you guys. But I think, they can hopefully put up a fight, and I don't know that they're going to get a win, but I think people will be excited to see some of the storylines that'll be interesting with this Wofford team that I just kind of touched on. And just in terms of the mid majors, I think the other thing I want to mention is SIUE. This is their first bid this year for the NCAA tournament ever in program history, under Coach Brian Barone. Who's led them to, I think it's their best finish in program history as well, record wise. So, I know they're probably not going to get a win against a top seeded Houston, but just, for us mid-major supporters, definitely one of the more exciting storylines coming out of this region.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's talk about Tennessee. So I know that we want to call this the region of chaos, but what can Tennessee and Houston do to kind of quell that chaos as the top 2 seeds here?
I mean, the Gonzaga draw for Houston is tough, but I think they're a team that you can kind of like push around a little bit, especially when Graham Ike is not on the floor. Ike is tougher than a $2 steak, but like if you take him off the floor, like you can kind of move around some of the other pieces. Like Nemhard is small, Hoff is kind of soft, like some of those guys. So I think Houston can kind of like find their way there, but that's going to be a really good game. And Tennessee, I mean, it's just the defense, right? I'll get to that point later, but like Kentucky was a bad matchup for Tennessee all season because the way Kentucky just kind of spaces the floor, it's tough for Tennessee to kind of defend. It's just Tennessee is a team that really takes away the 3-point line. But if you have 5 guys on the floor at any given moment that can shoot threes or really facilitate, they have to extend their defense, and then it just kind of gives up so much. So they're just the way they defend. So from that angle, Houston's just got to be tough. If you can get past Gonzaga, I don't see either Clemson, Purdue, High Point could be a team there too. McNeese didn't get into that game. I could see any of those teams putting up a real fight. I can't see any of those teams, putting up a real fight. And then Tennessee, I could see Tennessee going out early, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's go around here. Starting off with you, DeRosa. Who is your pick to win the Midwest?
God, this is the third region I've gone chalk, and I kind of hate it. So can I just give a really deep sleeper?
Sure.
Instead?
Love it.
I really like the way this bracket sets up for UCLA.
Wow.
I know, and I've been the top 8 guy all season. I know I have been, but the way you beat Utah State is you just push them around a little bit. If you move them a little bit off their spots, they can't do anything offensively. That's literally all UCLA does. Then you play Tennessee, a team that can struggle to score, and UCLA has the length to match up there. Then you either get a Kentucky, Illinois, Texas, Xavier. Frankly, I think Texas or Xavier, the winner of that game, I think beats Illinois and then gives Kentucky a real scare, no matter who it is.
Yeah.
So you play any of those teams. I could see UCLA beating those teams too. So UCLA is a team I'm probably going to pick to make a decent run, even though I don't really trust them. I just really like the matchups for them. So, you know what? I'll just for the purposes of the show, I'll say UCLA is making the Final Four.
Love it. Hey, look, we've seen them make the Final Four under more strenuous circumstances, right? We've seen them go from first four to Final Four. Sure. So I don't think it's the craziest thing you could say. Trevor, who you got?
Oh, this is just contradictory central for me because before the year, Clemson was my sleeper Final Four team. And to get a 5 and to lose Dylan Hunter 2 days ago, it just puts a big damper on a lot of things that he's out indefinitely with a broken hand. Wow. And McNeese, as we know, I mean, for the sake of from some rooting interest, I'd like McNeese to lose. I'll leave it at that. But go Will Wade, right? Purdue High Point. I think Purdue's actually a sleeper because of the Clemson uncertainty, because of the McNeese factor. I think Purdue actually all the stuff I just said before. I do think they'd be an interesting matchup with Houston. Did they not play each other earlier this year? I think they did. I don't know. I get that tournament in Vegas. It was really hard to follow that weekend, so it's just I may get it mixed up with something else. But like Purdue, like I said earlier, just the issue that they have Braden and they have Lawyer. But High Point's like 12 deep, so like that just kind of contradicts everything I think about that one. That bottom part of the bracket I kind of already addressed with Kentucky, Tennessee. I think that's the team that makes it out of the bottom there. But did they play each other, DeRosa? I see you looking it up.
I was actually just going to make a point on.
You're talking about Houston, Purdue?
I thought they played earlier this year. Maybe I'm.
No, they
did not. Purdue played Texas A&M though.
Oh, okay, maybe that's
what you're thinking of. Yeah.
Go ahead with your point. I'm almost done.
Yeah, I just wanted to be real quick. Purdue's rim protection this year, teams against Purdue were shooting 56.4% inside the arc. That is 350th of the country. High Point is the 15th best 2-point percentage offense in the country. I think if High Point wins, I think that's the key. Sorry.
Okay. All that being said, I've been a Houston guy for the last decade, and this is arguably the best team. No Jamal Shed. I made that point many times. Doris is probably sick of hearing it. I actually am not that fearful of Gonzaga. I think Georgia can actually beat them. I think it'd be interesting. I think that stylistically, I think Georgia has an advantage. I think Georgia's played a tougher schedule. I think that'll really help them. Obviously, the guard matchup experience there, Gonzaga's definitely got Georgia beat without a doubt. But I think this is just if this isn't the year for Houston to make it back to the Final Four and be competing for a national championship. Jamal Shed or not, I just don't know what to think anymore. So I'm going to pick Houston. That's probably picking too much with my heart, but they're the ones for crying out loud.
Yeah. Sarah, you going chalk here or you going crazy?
I'm going Tennessee.
Nice.
I feel like if they can get it together and, obviously playing Wofford first, you kind of have to, play them out. But I've been staring at this as DeRosa and Trevor went. You could go so many different ways. You could go Houston like Trevor did. UCLA is a very interesting pick. I'll say that much. You could see Gonzaga going. I agree. I don't see Purdue. Everyone every year is like, oh, Purdue's going to do this. Purdue's going to do that. Purdue's not really Purduing anything, actually. That's the problem that they've always had. Every year, you see the same kind of thing come out of like, oh, Purdue, and then they're out. You could go so many, like Kentucky. You could go so many different ways. I'm going Tennessee though because you got to look at just how much they've done this season, and someone who was supposed to go to Tennessee, and that was Tennessee and St. John's were my top two, and picked St. John's. I got to go Tennessee now.
All right, Riley, who you got?
Yeah, I think I'm going to have to go with Houston as well, and just going to echo some of the things that Trevor said quickly. But I think if this isn't the year for Houston, I think it feels like something's wrong. And I just looking down the bracket a little. I'm not super scared of Gonzaga and what they have to offer. Non-mid-major Gonzaga. I think Kentucky, and I know I haven't watched a lot of UCLA, so I can't speak to Michael's points on them and how the bracket's sort of set up for them. But I just think it's got to be Houston's year. And I think some of these other teams are battling it, whether it be injuries or just different storylines. And I think it's sort of set up nicely for Houston in that way.
Every time I stayed up to watch UCLA, to Riley's point, like they would lay a stinker, and so by like late January, I was like, I'm not staying up again for this stupid team.
It's just the mid-major sicko in me. I don't know that I've ever really gotten around to just tuning in for UCLA.
Same thing with Oregon, though, right? Like Michael, you just stay up for Oregon, and next thing you know, they go on that run where they just couldn't win a game, and it's like, why do I keep putting myself through this? And UCLA did that to me a couple of times. So.
I mean, there's a reason I took my Oregon victory lap in November.
Yeah, I got the tweets to back it up. I'm with you. Yeah.
All right. So with that, I will go chalk as well. I'm liking the Cougs. And we'll move on to our final region. Our fourth region of the night, by the way, we've now reached 400 live viewers on the pod. So welcome, everybody. Hope you can stick around for the rest of the tournament with us. But let's get into the East, the 1 seed being Duke after clinching both the ACC regular season and tournament titles. The 2 seed being Alabama after a very strong SEC campaign. Some other notable matchups: BYU versus VCU, Wisconsin, Montana, and then the 12 and 5, the 12 being the 12 being Liberty, the 5 being Oregon. Michael DeRosa's favorite team this year, outside of probably Butler and Georgetown,
and Utah State.
Yeah,
that's his final four, by the way.
What's that?
So that's his final four if it was all possible.
Yeah, would love to see it. I want to start off with you, Riley, in this region, and I specifically want to hone in on the 6-11 matchup, that being VCU, the A10 champs versus BYU. Kind of an interesting coincidence here, but BYU drew a 6 seed in the tournament last year, and they went up against the A10 champs, the 11 seed, this time Duquesne, that time Duquesne, and they lost 71-67. This VCU team, I would potentially argue, is a bit better than last year's Duquesne team. They looked really good all week down in DC. For you, what could be, VCU's path to, potentially a second weekend here?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it, Sam. The already a VCU team that looks a little stronger than the Duquesne team that got it done last year. But if you're a BYU fan, you got to be having like deja vu right now. It feels like.
Are you sweating a little bit if you're a BYU fan?
I would think so. I mean, with just the way that it's played out, it literally, it feels. I know obviously it's a different team, different program, but the way the storyline's setting up, it feels like exactly how it did last year. I'll talk a little about this VCU team. Very experienced, very veteran led. They're starting 5 and even a couple guys off the bench. It's pretty much all seniors, and even from the freshmen, sophomores down, it's all guys who are really competitive. Of course, just to mention a couple names: Max Shulga, the leading senior guard over there; Joe Bamisil, who's been really solid for them throughout the past 2 seasons. Philip Russell, who came in from the transfer portal this year, has been sort of the perfect 3-point shooting addition in the backcourt besides Shulga. Jack Clark, who came down from the mid-major level this past season, and who had some A10 experience, but who came down from the high major level at Clemson this past season and had some A10 experience with LaSalle previously. And he's sort of slotted in really well and is having just another a fantastic season for him. And additionally, Zeb Jackson, who's been just like who's sort of slided down to the bench for them this season, but has sort of taken on that role with grace and has just sort of been the perfect addition off the bench for them. But just looking overall at the way they play, I mean, this is a VCU team that's top 50 in offensive efficiency, according to KenPom, top 25 in adjusted defensive efficiency as well. Just a really solid 2-way team. And I talking about BYU a little, not a team I've really seen at all this year, just by nature of, a high major on the West Coast and the league they play in. But VCU, a team that's going to give anyone anyone across the country a fight. I think if you look up and down the schedule, not a ton of high major competition they played this year, but they have a win over Miami, Florida on a neutral court. They put up solid fights against some teams in the Mountain West, Colorado State, New Mexico. 2 teams that I believe are going to be here in the conference tournament. I at least know, or in the March Madness tournament. I at least know Colorado State is for sure. So VCU, a team that's going to put up a real good fight, and I could certainly see them getting through the next round and matching up well against a team like Wisconsin as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Elsewhere in this region, again, I don't know why I'm just feeling these 8-9 matchups this year. We've got Mississippi State versus Baylor. Anybody have any thoughts on what this Baylor team brings to the NCAA tournament?
All right, I guess I'll go. God, I don't have a good read on this game whatsoever. This is probably the game I'm least confident in the entire tournament. I think I'm going to go with Mississippi State just because Baylor doesn't really want to play defense half the time. And a lot of their offense is just ISO versus UISO. It's Jeremy Roach wants to go. Then VJ Edgecombe's turn. Rob Wright's turn. Rob Wright is awesome, by the way. He's going to be so good down the line. Versus, I like Mississippi State. I like Josh Hubbard. Cam Matthews is so much fun to watch. He's one of my favorite players in the country. So just in terms of what Baylor brings, I don't know. I think if you're a Duke fan and you're worried about the flag injury, which obviously you very well should be because he is one of the two guys in the running for National Player of the Year, and I think he's the betting favorite at this current moment. I really think that goes the other way, by the way. But this is you are playing two teams that are probably the two weakest 8 and 9s in the entire tournament. If you end up winning, Baylor doesn't provide any rim protection whatsoever. Omier is awesome, but he's awesome offensively. He's going to get you on the glass. Defensively, Duke's length I think could really bother him, and Duke can score on him as well. Versus Mississippi State, again, is also really small. They run 3 really small guards, a lot. Duke eats up teams that play small. They just eat them up because it's Sion James, Tyrese Proctor in the backcourt. Those dudes are long, they're athletic, they're scary. So I think if you're a Duke fan, I think you have to absolutely adore that matchup.
Yeah, absolutely. Sarah, you have something?
The only thing I'm thinking of, well, no, this is just more of just Jeremy Roach just can't dislocate his finger again. I watched that. I was there last year when he fell on the court, and he was right in front of me, and I just saw a finger dangling. I was like, oh, okay. Love to see it. And you heard it go back in place. So if he can just not dislocate fingers while he's playing, maybe he can help out his team. But kind of what Doris was saying, I don't know. This is just a very interesting matchup. And, especially for Duke fans and, if Cooper Flagg's not playing, that runs the risk of a lot of other things that could possibly go wrong for them. And hopefully he's back. That'd be great. I think that if he is playing, they're going to go far. If he's not, it's up in the air now.
Yeah, absolutely. Dislocated finger, arguably not the best thing to play a basketball game with. Around the horn for the final time. Let's go. Gut check, Final Four. Riley, you want to kick us off here?
Sure. I mean, just going back to what Sarah said briefly, if Duke's healthy, I think it's got to be Duke. But, I think on the contingency that they're not, I love this Alabama team. I've definitely been lucky enough to watch them a couple times this year. And, obviously having Mark Sears back and Grant Nelson, of course. And, they, some of the additions they bought in this offseason, Cliff Omiori and Aiden Holloway. And it's a really solid Alabama team. So, I think if Duke's not healthy, I'd like Alabama to maybe make a good run here. And I think that's a team that, could really make some noise in the bracket here.
Absolutely. Sarah, who you got?
So I want Duke. However, because I cannot pick Alabama, as a person who grew up in Georgia, I'm an Alabama hater through and through. I do not care. I will always hate Alabama. So sorry. It's in my nature. I grew up hating them. It's never going to change. Duke, if they're healthy, I can see it. But I'm going to pick something kind of odd as my, if Cooper Flagg's not playing, Arizona, I don't know why, but I feel like that they have some momentum that they can get into and tap into that could just push them far. Obviously, they'll probably play Oregon unless Liberty can pull an upset. I think that they could make it far. I'm gonna go with Arizona if Duke's not healthy.
Love that pick. Arizona. I mean, Arizona to me, I feel like is what Oregon has been to you, DeRosa. It's just like that team that I love kind of just staying up late for. I just felt like their entire run through the Big 12, they were always pulling off something crazy at the end. So I would love to see them. But before we get into my pick, Trevor, what you got?
Trev, you muted.
All right, 2 for 2 on that. Bottom cluster here. It was really exciting when it came out, I promise. One thing, just to Sarah's point, to pick Arizona means you have to pick Caleb Love, and I will not be doing that. Bottom right corner is what I'm going to hone in on for just a second. St. Mary's Vanderbilt reminds me a lot of St. Mary's Grand Canyon last year. That is one thing to keep an eye on stylistically. I think that'll be really interesting. That just might put a damper in some St. Mary's picks for folks there. However, I do think that they win that game. I do think they can also beat Alabama as well. I think if there's ever a St. Mary's team that can beat Alabama, it's this one. That cluster right there, I think, could make a really far run there. I think St. Mary's would be a really fine Elite Eight team out of that cluster because I think they could beat Wisconsin. I think they could beat BYU. So that's the team to watch down there at the bottom. The upset pick, just really quick. I know you wanted to Final Four, but I'll just give you one that I'm absolutely circling. Already put it in the bracket. Liberty's beating Oregon. Oregon's been on too bad of a slide here in the last month. Quack, quack, baby. Richie McKay has one of the best things he's ever had without a single, quote, dynamic player like a Darius McGee type. Even though the kid that's on the team there, lighting up three, has been really good. They're just a perfect team on both sides of the ball. And I think that is the best possible 5 matchup for them. So I think they make that top part of the bracket weird. I think Flacco ended up being healthy. Some little birdies around the area. I think that he looked pretty healthy in Charlotte. So I'm going to go with Duke, but the team I'm watching out for as like a dark horse would be St. Mary's.
All right. DeRosa, who you got?
Yeah, the 6-11 and 7-10 games in this region rule. St. Mary's wants to slow it down. Vanderbilt kind of wants to speed it up. St. Mary's really compact defensively. Like there are some times where you'll see you'll just be up late, like you're checking scores of games, and it'll be like St. Mary's 34, Pepperdine 9, and it's like, yep, that's just one of those St. Mary's games. BYU VCU I think is also a really interesting game. You've got BYU is heated up late, but then Houston got them. VCU kind of plays like relatively similar to Houston, very physical defensively. They want to get there, but I'm not picking against my Mighty Mormons and the Russian Assassin. Richie Saunders has been awesome, by the way, lately. I could see to Trev's point, I could see BYU or St. Mary's making a run. Wisconsin's also been really good lately. I don't have a good feel on this region whatsoever. I think Duke kind of has a cakewalk to the Elite Eight. So just for that, and I don't know who I'm picking out of the bottom of the region. So just for that, I'm going to pick Duke. But I've picked every single 1 seed, and that makes me feel like a coward. And I don't like being a coward. So I'm going to pick an upset somewhere.
So
who's your pick out of that?
I'm confused.
Just give me Duke still. But
all right, okay, Duke, okay.
You know what? Screw it. Give me the Mormons.
Whoa!
Give me the Mormons.
I knew it.
Locking it in.
Mormons.
BYU.
Mormons. Wow.
The Mighty Mormons are coming.
Yeah,
on that crazy turn, guys. This is the first region where so far all 4 of you have each picked a different team. So I feel like I gotta go crazy here. I would love to pick Wisconsin, but I don't know. This Alabama team just feels too good, and I feel like they're gonna get their 2nd consecutive Final Four pick. So I'm actually gonna go with you, Riley, and go Alabama as my Final Four team out of this region. So, wrapping up this bracket. Wrapping up, going over everybody's Final Four. Riley, you've got Alabama, Auburn, St. John's, Houston. Trevor, you've got Duke, Auburn, Florida, Houston.
Wow, really?
Sarah, you've got Arizona, Auburn, St. John's, Tennessee. DeRosa,
that's interesting.
BYU, Auburn, Florida, UCLA. That's crazy. I've got Alabama,
Trevor,
Auburn,
I couldn't do that.
Alabama, Auburn, St. John's, Houston. It is kind of crazy, right? When we do it this way, when then you finally look at your final product and you go, "Oh man, that's what I've got."
Yeah.
But let's be honest though. I know here's the issue. Statistically, I think it's only happened 3 times ever where all the 1 seeds made it. And the last time that happened was 2008, right? With the Kansas Chalmers year or whatever.
Yeah.
But statistically, a lot of them make it, right? So it's awesome to pick upsets, but it's also awesome that St. Peter's doesn't make the Final Four. I was at my only Final Four ever was the FAU one, right? Everyone was complaining, moaning and complaining that happened with that cluster of teams, and then UConn was there. And I was like, guys, this is a one-off year. And then the next year it was all ridiculously good teams. And so the point being is like I laughed about how gross my all 4 ones was, but like obviously one of them's going to lose statistically, but all 4 of those teams are good for a reason. I don't back down from that.
But also, if like you look at KenPom this year, it's like this group of 1 seeds is like they're all plus 30 and adjusted whatever is like overall adjusted efficiency is. Like that's the first time we've had that in a long time. So like this is probably the best cluster of 1 seeds we've had in 5-10 years.
Yeah. Yep. No, it'll be great. So I think we've got a great tournament ahead of us. Obviously, this was kind of a gut check, first reactions, but most of our brackets will probably be unveiled on Thursday. That's when a lot of the services to post your brackets close. We've got some more great pre-tournament coverage coming for you guys later this week. But as we wrap up, Riley, for Mid-Major Madness, what have you guys got cooking up for the tournament this week?
Yeah, of course. A lot of mid-major related coverage coming up, stories, previews, just anything exciting sort of mid-major surrounding the tournament. We're definitely doing stories on, and certainly a lot's coming up. I'll be in I'll be in Newark for the Sweet 16 and Elite 8, hoping to have, a mid-major related program there to cover. But just in the lead up, come check out my Twitter, Mid-Major Madness Twitter, if you're not already following. And we'll have lots of just upcoming tournament coverage throughout the next couple of days.
Yeah, absolutely. And then when the tournament finishes, you definitely want to check out Riley's other project, the Portal Report. So make sure you check that out to see where all of your teams, if you're a mid-major fan, just hope where you don't see some of your favorite players' names pop up. Sarah, you're one of our Road to the Garden specialists, a St. John specialist. What's your outlook for the week? Just stressing about the Johnnies or anything else that you're excited for?
Oh, I'm just excited. Just saw that they're playing at 9:45 on Thursday night. And I don't work Friday, so I'll be locked in. Nothing else will be distracting me. I will be rooting for the Johnnies the entire way. Root for all the Big East teams in the entire way. I do want to see, some upsets. I think a Liberty win would be really interesting to see. Seeing maybe if UCLA, the Mormons, gotta love to see what might happen. But I think that it's gonna be a really fun week. I think it's gonna be a really interesting first 2 rounds. I'm very excited.
Yeah, absolutely. Trevor, you are one of our main men on the Everything College Basketball podcast, along with DeRosa and Josh Burton and Peyton Burton and Coach Scott Pera. You guys, I know, have a big broadcast coming up tomorrow night. Could you give us a little bit more detail on that?
Yep. 5:30. We'll be going live from the Everything College Basketball pages. And then just in general, it's always a really fun show. I'm sure there will be many guests as well. We're getting those lined up here in the next couple of days. Over on the 2 Pointers podcast, I'm hoping to have 2 coaches from this tournament field. ? Still working on times, but really excited. 2 guys that I really, really like. I've definitely talked about them both at least once tonight. And then just in general, shout out to all the teams this year that had, I'm not going to name them all. I can't find the list right now. Shout out to all the teams that had the men and women both make it this year. There was a ton. I know there's at least 4 or 5 that I can think off the top of my head where that happens. So just really cool when that stuff happens, when the entire school is torn apart and sending one team 3,000 miles from the other. So good luck to all those programs figuring that out. But really cool stuff. A lot of great fun this week. I know we've got some cool stuff on Wednesday as well. We've got a gambling themed show, House College Hoops. So a lot of great coverage.
Yeah, absolutely. And DeRosa, aside from being one of the main guys on ECB, you are one of our heads of Road to the Garden, our Big East focused wing of the House of College Hoops. Could you talk about what you guys got cooking up over these next couple weeks?
Yeah, we got a couple shows breaking down some of the Big East draws. Definitely have some takes, so that's going to be fun. And then we got a show we're doing. We should be having 2 shows out this week, so that's going to be fun. We've teased the Tuesday one a little bit, doing a draft of tournament teams. So that's going to be a ton of fun. Yeah. And then obviously portal season heats up. So if you're a fan of a Big East team, and Riley's OG portal guy, so shout out to him, Portal King. But if you're a fan of a Big East team that hasn't seen your team's name called, even then there's still stuff to find out. Like we're heating up, like who's going to be on your team next year? How do we feel about all this stuff? That sort of thing. And if you're a Villanova fan as well, the head coaching search, I don't think there's going to be anyone who's going to have better insight on that than Tommy Godin in the world. And I mean that seriously. So we got good stuff coming out. ECB show tomorrow is going to be a ton of fun. I'm looking forward to it all.
When Tommy starts tracking flights, you let me know.
Guys, it is heating up. We are here. Get hyped. Get excited. Thank you to everyone who tuned in. We're up to 573 live viewers. So thank you so much for checking out the House of College Hoops 2025 Bracket Reveal Super Show. Like we just finished up talking about, we've got so many more broadcasts coming at you over these next couple of weeks. Make sure you tune back in on all House Enterprise and ECB channels to check out the shows that we've got coming tomorrow, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then anything we've got after that. And I know, DeRosa, you're our self-professed number one Crown tournament fan, so we'll probably got some stuff coming up for that later in the season. But with that, make sure you follow us at all the socials that you see listed below for any updates on more of our broadcasts. Make sure you check out house-enterprise.com for updated blog posts about everything March Madness that you can get your hands on. And so for Riley Frayne, Sarah Kiernan, Trevor Everett, Michael DeRosa, I'm Sam Basil. This is the House of College Hoops, and we'll see you guys next time.